power. Now, obviously, Obama and Bush, not the same dude, but the perception of our allies as we started to step this up might be that it was for us, the process for us, is beginning the process for the United States to militarize space, and we'd be a little worried about that. Also, the environmental concerns of that as well. Now, I didn't talk a ton about nuclear power in space, but we are running a little bit out of time. But I just wanted you to know that these are sort of things that are out there. There are some other kind of crazy energy cases. Potentially, there's all kinds of things that have to do with declassifying alien technology. I'm not going to get into that, but I imagine your aliens lecture will talk to you a little bit about that. Just know those things are out there. Stuff Tesla has done as potential energy, as potential energy sources, dealing with harnessing the electromagnetic energy of the Earth. And things like mining the quantum vacuum. I didn't talk about mining the quantum vacuum because it's not necessarily something we do in space, it can be done terrestrially, but just to give you guys sort of an idea that these are not the only areas of energy in space, but some of the, I guess some of the bigger ones, some of the bigger areas and things that I'm pretty certain you'll encounter throughout the year. All right, so it's about, let's see, about 10:30, pretty close to on track. Got some time for questions. Anybody have any questions? Want to talk about energy in space or not? No questions? Or yes?
Like in the process of beaming down like power from the solar power satellites, like how far have we gotten into that, like researching that technology?
Oh, the microwave transferal technology is actually very promising, as is the laser. Now, I'm not a scientist, unfortunately, but I can tell you that we've been doing it over about a 100-mile period. Maybe somebody in the solar power satellites lab can correct me if I'm wrong about that. We've been doing experiments with it over about a 100-mile period in the Hawaiian Islands. It's been fairly successful. Yeah. So it's the making that small enough to use and launch into space, and that part of the process is the part that needs more development. Yo.
Are any satellites currently powered by a nuclear reactor?
Yes. The Cassini for sure, and others. There's a few others
that are in Earth's orbit.
That's a good question. I wish I knew the answer to that. I'm not 100% sure if there are any in low Earth orbit. I think the answer is I think the answer is no. We use them for primarily deep space exploration. Like the Cassini was going to Saturn, for example. So that's a little bit harder to get to. I get past the asteroid belt all the way up to Saturn. But good question. Yes. With your hand up.
So, one of the cards in the Blue Money app said that there's some helium-3 under Texas or something?
Yeah, there's helium-3 in the Earth's mantle. The problem is that it's so embedded in the mantle that mining it is difficult. In the process of mining it, releases it as a gas, and it's not something we're going to be able to get at. Terrestrial helium-3 will actually be harder to mine than lunar helium-3. This is not easy for us to get to due to its depth in the mantle. But there's a bunch of it. Some of it's under Texas. Some of it's all over. But most of what we get from nuclear weapons. Yeah.
Are there any perception-based advantages for these types of apps?
Yes. I mean, for any of them, there's spin-off advantages for sure. That's not perception-based in FASO, but it is like if you're asking for like infrastructure advantages that don't require us to win the feasibility debate. Yeah, for sure. Like I was talking about for solar power satellites and aerospace advantage. It doesn't matter whether the solar power satellites work. We're giving our aerospace industry something to build on, and the spin-offs that come from that are beneficial. For things like nuclear power, there are definitely nuclear-powered satellites. There are definitely perception-based disadds to that. Whether or not we would use the nuclear-powered satellite in an aggressive way might not matter to Russia or China, for example. The same is true. Infrastructure advantages are same are true for mining. You know, whether or not we get to the helium-3 might be less important than the infrastructure built in the processes of trying to get to helium-3. So for sure there are lots. Luke.
Well, the video never really explicitly say this, but how would we actually get the resources from an asteroid to Earth?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Probably they would have to be stored and sent back to Earth. So they would be towed back to Earth in the same way that we would send it on its own or tow back to Earth for those processes, depending on what we found. Since most of the resources we get from asteroids aren't necessarily energy-based, like helium-3 or solar power, but rather they're ores and things like that, it would be fairly easy to get those back. Of all the things that might be easy to get back, that's one of the things that would be easier. Yeah? Okay. Oh, hang on. This guy first, then. Oh, yeah. Go.
Would that also cover, the asteroids crashing into each other?
What's that?
If we towed it away from, say, the asteroid belt, would that cover, because all the asteroids are constantly crashing into each other?
Yeah, they constantly bump into each other. It's basically like Empire Strikes Back. Yeah, I mean, there's so many of them, and the amount of mining that we would do, it seems unlikely that's really going to affect the amount of asteroid collision that happens. We do stabilize, we do attempt, landers would attempt to stabilize them so that the rotation wasn't quite so swift and it'd be easier to mine from. I don't really know that the same process we're talking about for mining is very effective for reducing asteroid collision. Over here now.
This is back on the SDS. Wouldn't it be like problematic beaming energy back on the Earth? Like, how would they be able to do that so precisely so they would like microwave?
Yeah, after the most proposals suggest that after collection, it depends on the orbit of the satellite, right? And so it'll just course correct so that it's in a geosynchronous orbit with where the power station is, in the same way that we do flybys for any other sort of satellite or any sort of geosynchronous satellite orbit, above where we would collect the power, so that it could be more efficiently beamed down to Earth. Yeah. I didn't mention this, but also there's a lot of interesting people who talk about the perversion of solar-powered satellites being used for like death rays, reflecting the sun's power back to Earth and blowing stuff up. So that's pretty cool. If you're an evil genius. That sounds like evil genius technology. Anybody else? Other questions? Happy answering. Well, all right then. Thank you all very much. You guys have a nice afternoon, morning time.